Hello, this is Mrs. Meckens, and in this lesson series, we're working on how readers question the text they read. In the last lesson, we really targeted this idea of before reading questioning, this idea of previewing or pre-reading the text. And we talked about the importance of generating questions before you start reading that first paragraph, the first page. And the reason is because if you don't, then you just do the reading. As opposed to with questions before you dive in, you're actually reading with a purpose. You're reading with focus. You're after your answers. In the last lesson, we talked about how do you generate before reading questions. And we said the first thing you have to do is be a thief, right? An information thief. And we have to use our reading voice, and we have to collect details that authors and publishers give us in the text features. Look at the title, look at the subheads, look at the visuals, look at the captions, and steal as much information as you can. That is your reading voice, and that is how you're going to generate questions before you start reading the first paragraph. You look at those details and you wonder things. That was the last lesson. In this lesson, I want to talk about a second type of questioning that a reader experiences. If that was before reading, I want to talk about a type of questioning that we do during reading, while we're reading. Look at my screen for a minute. So if we put on our mask and we're an information thief and we collect details to then generate questions before reading, now check out this slide. The idea is you then start to read. During reading, you're collecting more facts, details, and information. Look, I've taken my information thief mask off. I only use that before reading. Now I'm reading and collecting details, taking notes, annotating, whatever. But as I collect details, I have a new question. As I collect a few more details, my thinking voice has another question. This idea that while you're reading, you're having thoughts, the thoughts you have aren't always just connections. They're not always just visualizations. Sometimes your thoughts are more new questions about the content. And so we refer to this kind of questioning as during reading wonders. What are you wondering about as you're reading this text? What new questions do you have? Okay, so before I tape that up, let's kind of talk about how do you just have questions while you're reading? Like what should they sound like? If I'm really asking questions with my thinking voice during reading, what might those questions be about? Okay, well, if you're reading about a story, narrative, literature, fiction, then the same things that you're summarizing, the same most important information, the story elements, you start to wonder about them. You start to think, what's up with the setting? Why is it important? What if it wasn't that setting? What about that character? How are they feeling? Why are they feeling like this? Why did they make that choice? You start wondering and thinking about the problem or the solution or possible solutions. This idea of wondering about story elements, those are the questions you'll have. Now, if it's fiction, it would be that. But if it's nonfiction, if it's informational text, then your thoughts might be more about who, assuming it's a historical figure or a famous person or a group of people, a Native American tribe, something like that. So what are your questions about who is involved in this nonfiction piece, or what is happening to them? What is going on? Or maybe it's not a who, it's a what, like a body system. What is it? What do you know? What do you want to know more about? Where is it happening? When? Why does it work like that? How come it's like that? These are the very questions that readers have during reading. We don't just generate questions before reading and then start reading looking for the answers and we're good. No, No, you have those questions before and then you read a little and you're thinking, and sometimes you're making connections, and sometimes you're making pictures in your mind, and sometimes you're asking questions. This idea of asking more questions during reading. It's not that you only ask questions at the beginning. And the during reading questions shouldn't just be the teacher's questions. You, as a reader, should be wondering things when you're reading. If you're not, I can tell you're probably not going to get it. Again, I'm not saying you're super excited with these questions, but you got to fake it till you make it, you guys. What are you wondering about as you see that detail? Use that detail, put it together, and have a thought about it. So what? What's important about it? That's the whole reason we read, is to get it. So ask yourself questions to help yourself get it. Now, as we talk about this idea of during reading questions, I want to kind of draw a connection to something we learned in an earlier lesson series. Do you guys remember highlighting? Do you remember the idea of annotating? The idea that when you're reading a passage that you might mark up the passage, but you're putting keywords, phrases, thoughts next to the author's thoughts, right? The reading voice thoughts. The author said this and it made me think this, and we called it highlighting. If you're going to highlight, underline, or circle the author's words, why are they important? What are you thinking about them? Okay, well, I want to tell you something. That when we were first working on highlighting or annotating the text, often what we were marking in the margin was simply a connection or a synonym or just a thought. But the thought wasn't a question. You guys, what you can annotate are your reader questions, your during reading questions. As you're reading and you have a thought, yeah, mark it. As you're reading and you make a connection, yeah, mark it. As you're reading and you see a picture in your mind, yeah, sketch it. But as you're reading, if you have a question, write it down in just a couple keywords. Remember, text message spelling, abbreviations, just a couple words and a question mark. What questions are you also having during reading? These are your during reading wonderings about characters and setting, about topics, about why, about how, all those kinds of questions. Okay, now, I got a little more to tell you before we kind of really bring this all together in an example. And let me first add to our chart a little bit. Okay, so we have to also wonder during reading. We have questions before, we have questions during reading. And those questions we're having, those are coming from our thinking voice. They're yellow, which is why I put them on the silhouette head in the previous lesson and in the silhouette head here. I see these details and they make me think. They make me wonder about this or that. And so I'm making notes of those. Now I'm going to slide that down here on the bottom of our chart, because regardless of the type of questioning we're working on, this is how it works. You see something and it causes you to have a question. But as you're reading, you have to remember the whole point of reading. It's to get it, to understand it. In other words, while you're reading, noticing details and having thoughts, having questions and writing them down, you also have to be reading for answers. Readers juggle a lot of thoughts at the same time. They're remembering the pre-reading questions they had. They're also logging new questions. They're looking for answers to the pre-reading questions and the during reading questions. All of this is getting juggled. So keep in mind, questioning isn't just a one and done. We did it, we're good, get the answers, check it off. No. Readers continue to ask questions, and as they're asking questions, they're aware of answers. They're looking, they're thinking. Their thinking voice says, hey, that's a detail that answers a question we had. Okay, let me kind of show you what this looks like, okay, and how this feels. Do you remember when at the end of the last lesson I gave you the Supersized Fast Food Facts article and you read it on your own, okay? And if you didn't, that's okay. I just wanted to use that article for my experience here, okay, what you're about to see. So on your screen is a picture of this much larger anchor chart, okay? And the idea was that you were supposed to skim that article, only the text features, and steal information and come up with questions before reading. Okay, so I did it just to have an example here. So I saw these details and it got me thinking about these questions before I ever read the article. Now let's look at the screen. Here are the questions I had. I had this question is, how is it possible that fast food is part of a healthy diet? I had the question of, how can I possibly get smaller portions when value meals come so large? I had the question after seeing the detail, the subhead, that fast food's not all bad. I'm thinking, how? How's it not all bad? How can you eat out and eat healthily? Okay, and then I saw details in the pictures, French fries, potatoes, potato chips, and I had the question, so are potatoes the worst thing? Because they're kind of showing that in the pictures. Okay, so with this notion of pre-reading questions, now I want to show you how you juggle all these different thoughts, okay? You juggle the questions you had before reading while you start to read, and you're looking for answers, but you're also aware of new questions that might pop up. So I'm going to do it for a little bit. You're just going to listen to my reading voice and thinking voice, okay? And then I'm going to ask you to help me with the latter part of this article, okay? So I'm just going to start right in with the passage right at the top here. Okay, Jeffrey and Gil walked into the Bigger Burger restaurant. Man, am I hungry, said Jeffrey. Me too, agreed Gil. I'm going to have a super duper mammoth burger. He reached into his pocket. Okay, now, let me pause right there, because that portion of my text right here, okay, I'm having a text to self connection. So remember, highlighting, you can jot down just thoughts. Yeah, I feel it. My favorite restaurant is. I can do that. That's thinking voice, but those aren't questions. Okay, so let me keep going and show you how my thinking voice then starts to speak in questions. Okay, he reached into his pocket. I have just enough money for a super duper scooper of fries too, he said. And so I'm having a question. I had just enough money, and I'm wondering, this is a new question for me, okay? It doesn't answer anything, but I'm just wondering, how much money did he have? In other words, to buy what he wants, is it really expensive? I'm writing expensive, or is it really cheap? How much money's in his pocket? Okay, let me keep going. That's a gut buster, Jeffrey said with a laugh. I want something smaller. I'm going to get a super duper cola and the side of beef burger with lots of mayo. What are we going to do after we eat? Gil asked. Digest the load and rest, answered Jeffrey. Okay, wait, I'm having another during reading question. This idea of what you do after you eat and rest. My question is, why are we always so tired after we eat? Why so tired after we eat, like a big meal or fast food meal or whatever it might be? Okay, let me keep going. Fast food is not only fast, it's inexpensive, convenient, tasty. Inexpensive. My thinking voice is telling me, hey, that's a detail that answers an earlier question. I wonder, did he have a lot of money in his pocket for this fast food meal or not much? Well, they're telling me fast food is inexpensive. I just got an answer. Not only am I coming up with new questions, but I'm aware when I get an answer as well. Let me keep going. Many kids could eat it for every meal. In fact, some people do. Gil and Jeffrey have fast food 3 or 4 times a week. The number of people eating fast food has almost tripled in the past 20 years. Okay, I'm having a new question. Why? I mean, we've had fast food restaurants for more than 20 years. So why has it tripled? I jot my question down next to the detail that caused the question. Why has it tripled? I'm curious about that. I'm looking for that answer as I continue to read. The Center for Science and Public Interest says nearly half of all food dollars is spent on food eaten away from home. Okay, now wait. Remember, you can take notes and just have thoughts. They don't all have to be questions. And so this idea of nearly half the food dollars, so half are spent on fast food or restaurants and half are spent at the grocery. That's not a question. Remember, the thinking voice can just make notes, some thoughts, some connections. We're really working on, and it asks questions, but see how I'm juggling? This is how that works. Okay, help me out with this next part. Help me out. Let's keep going. All right, fast food, however, doesn't rank high with health experts because of the fat and calories. We're all familiar with burgers, fries, fried chicken, tacos, burritos, and roast beef offered by fast food restaurants. Whoops. Part of the reason fast food tastes good is its high fat content. The fat makes the food taste and feel good in your mouth. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not just keep taking that in. It feels good in your mouth. It didn't say tastes good. It says feels good. The fat makes it feel good. What question are you wondering? I'm wondering, how does it make it feel good? Like, what does non-fatty food feel like in my mouth? I'm going to write that down. So it makes it feel good in my mouth. How does it make it feel? What about non-fatty food? How does that feel in my mouth? I don't understand. Is it a texture thing? What are we talking about? I'm having new questions. All right, let's keep going. Certain amounts of fats are important to a healthy body, but the fats in fast foods are often saturated fats in meat and fried foods. You should not eat too much of these kinds of fats. Kate Fenster, a dietitian, says there are ways to stay away from these fats and still keep your taste buds happy. And if you cut down on the amount of fat, you'll knock out a lot of calories too. Okay, now wait a minute. How? Is your thinking voice asking you, how do you stay away from fatty foods at fast food restaurants? That's a during reading question, a new question. This is a new wondering. How can I do that? And so I'm going to jot that down. How is this possible? How can I do that? Let's go to the next slide. All right, smaller portions. Choosing regular size portions is a very good idea. And so, wait a minute. This idea of, look over here. Remember one of our first questions, one of the first questions I had when I was doing my reading voice, it was, how do I have small portions? How do I eat less when the value meals are so large? Look, I'm getting an answer right here, you guys. It says, don't get the value meal, get the regular size portion. What? So I got an answer. I'm going to mark that answer. I got an answer to that question. Mark it down. Answer to that question. Don't get the large. But whoa. Sometimes when you get an answer, then all of a sudden you have a new question like, well, what if you're really hungry? What if you're hungry enough to eat that much food? I'm going to write that down. But what if you're that hungry? Okay, let's keep going. The extra large burgers and fries and other fast food servings are far larger than the standard serving size as set by the U.S. government. If it's set by the government and they're not following the standard, do you have a question? How can they get away with that? How are they allowed to do that? Yep, I'm writing that down. I'm writing that down next to the standard serving size of the government, okay? Fenster suggests that if you're really hungry, you could add foods to those regular size portions. Are you having the thought? Are you having the thought, you guys? Hey, remember up here, I said, but what if you're really hungry and you can eat that much? She says, no. Don't get the large value meal. Don't get all that fat content. Look, we're getting an answer, you guys. She says, add foods to the regular size. What are the answers? Keep going. A salad with low-fat dressing, a glass of milk, a potato with chili, broccoli. All of these will help fill you up. Do you see how we're getting an answer to our question? So I want to mark that down and identify, hey, I had this question and I'm getting this answer. Do you see how this works? Readers don't just generate before reading questions. Readers are very aware of questions they had before they started reading, and they're adding to it while reading. But the piece that I want you to know is no reader is waiting for their fifth grade teacher to tell them the answers. How do you get your answers? You read on. You read on and say, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, there's the answer I was looking for. You confirm it. Or you say, whoa, I didn't expect that. That kind of rocked my world. I adjust my thinking. But nonetheless, how do I get my answer? By reading on. This is what readers do. Readers generate questions before they read and more questions while they read. And the whole time they are reading, they are tracking the questions and very aware of when they get their answers. If you were in Mrs. Smekens' class, here's what I would have you do next. I would have you take the U.S. Census article that we did in the last lesson, and here are the questions, the pre-reading questions that we generated. I want you to read this article, it's 2 pages, and identify when you find the answer to the pre-reading questions. That's what's here in this picture. But I also want you to generate more new questions and see if you can't find the answers as you read on. I want you to do it with the census article, and you got 2 articles this time, the vaccines article. Here were the pre-reading questions we generated. Now I want you to read, looking for the answers, marking them when you find them, and attempting to generate more new during reading questions. If you were in Miss Smekens' class, that's what we'd be doing. But your teacher might have a better idea.